I woke to sirens and a stranger's phone glowing above me, a post from my son-in-law that read, "Finally, a day without the drama king." Time-stamped the very minute my heart quit behaving. While I rode an ambulance, Brandon raised a glass. While I fought for air, my daughter Megan tapped like. If that twist hooked you, hit subscribe, like this video, and tell me in the comments what time it is where you are. I want to know who's listening with me right now. The beeping at Riverside Memorial kept time like a smug metronome. I'm Arthur Hale, 68, former millwright, widower. Today I was a patient in a paper dress. A nurse with calm eyes and a baseball cap ponytail appeared. "Mr. Hale? I'm Kayla Brooks. You had a heart attack at work. 2 hours unconscious. You're stable now." Stable sounded like a chair with one leg shorter than the others. "Did you reach my daughter?" I asked. "She's first on the list." Kayla checked the chart. Something in her face tightened and smoothed. "We called. She said she couldn't get away." "On a Thursday?" I tried to sit up. Kayla's hand was gentle but firm. "She doesn't work Thursdays. She cleans and listens to those crime podcasts." "Let's keep it easy," she said, easing me back. Slow breaths. I pointed at the drawer. "My phone." "5 minutes," she said, placing it in my palm like contraband. "Then rest." 17 calls from the plant. 3 from my buddy Dennis. Nothing from Megan. I called her. 1 ring, 2, 5, voicemail. "Meg, it's Dad. Riverside Memorial. Heart attack. Room 5C. Call me." I texted 2. "Had heart attack. Please respond." The bubble turned blue and sat there. I opened the app one pretend I don't use. Brandon's page showed 2 cocktails, lime wedges, tiny umbrellas, bright countertop. Caption, "Finally, a day without the drama king." He tagged Megan. The time read 1:47 p.m., exactly when the floor tilted, the foreman shouted for the AED, and the world narrowed to sirens. I screenshotted it with a thumb that shook for reasons no cardiologist patches. Neighbors I'd lent my ladder to had liked it. A cousin added a skull like it was wit. I set the phone down because the room was steady and I was not. The past uncoiled. 12 grand on their down payment. The alternator I bought. The groceries when payday got weird. The rent when a client ghosted. The night I watched their cat while they worked late. Every favor felt like a brick. I'd built them a bridge and called it love. Kayla returned with water. "Pain. Not the kind that fits your chart," I said. She followed my eyes to the dimmed screen. Families do strange math when hospitals call. Shock, pride, fear. Give it a breath. I drew one in until the ribs complained, let it out slow. The monitor approved with a green wave. "She used to answer on the second ring," I said. "When she was little, she'd pick dandelions and call them sun coins." "Bodies scare people," Kayla said, tightening tape with practiced kindness. "Bad moments can make good people look worse." "Or show them plain," I said. The room smelled like bleach and hot metal. On the tray lay a pamphlet called Life After Cardiac Events with a silver-haired man on a bicycle. I don't bike. I keep lists. So I made one because lists don't lie when people do. 1. Breathe. 2. Drink water. 3. Call Dennis if the silence gets louder. 4. Do not open Brandon's page again. I opened Brandon's page again. He'd replied to a friend. "Peace and quiet is priceless." Another asked, "Did he finally move to Florida?" Brandon answered, "Working on it." My thumb hovered over reply. I locked the screen instead and watched the window. Life kept going. It always does, especially when you need it to stop. Kayla slid the phone into the drawer. "That's enough internet for today." "That's plenty," I said. The beeping softened. A cloud crossed the sun. The room relaxed with it. Megan's silence settled like a folded quilt, warm at first, then heavy. I closed my eyes and counted breaths the way men count fence posts on long drives. When I woke again, the green numerals said 9:12 and the cup left a wet ring like proof I'd existed. I pressed the button. Kayla arrived with the same steady step. "You're doing well," she said. "If labs look good in the morning, we'll talk discharge." "Any messages?" She checked. "Your neighbor, Carolyn Reed, called to ask if you needed anything. She'll feed the cat. Tell her thank you." I said. I didn't ask about Megan. There's a way to save face when the only face you've got is tired. Kayla adjusted the blanket and left. I lay there listening to the machine praise me for every small decision to keep breathing. The night hummed like an old transformer. I let it. I didn't bargain. I didn't make plans. I didn't promise myself anything grand. Somewhere a cart squeaked by, silence again. Counted. I watched the dark, and, for once it blinked first. The second night in that hospital felt like someone had dimmed the whole world and left only the sound of machines to keep me company. I lay there replaying Brandon's words again and again. Those smug little cocktail emojis burned into my eyelids even when I closed them. I had raised Megan to believe family was everything. I had worked 60 hours a week, missed vacations, postponed surgeries just to keep her fed, housed, and through college. And yet when my heart gave out, she wasn't by my side. She was laughing at me, calling me a drama king while I hovered between life and death. I don't remember drifting off, but sometime after midnight I startled awake, drenched in sweat, because in my dreams Sarah was standing at the foot of the bed. My late wife's face was younger than I remembered, but her eyes were sharp, almost disappointed. "Arthur," she said, "don't let them steal the rest of your life." Then she vanished, and I sat up gasping, the monitor shrieking until Kayla came running. She soothed me, adjusted the wires, and told me to breathe. But I could feel something had shifted in me. I wasn't just a patient anymore. I was a man with a choice. By morning, Megan still hadn't called. Not a text, not a voicemail. The silence was its own diagnosis. Kayla checked my vitals and smiled. "You'll probably go home tomorrow, Mr. Hale. You're strong." I nodded, but inside I was trembling because home didn't feel like home anymore. Home was a place Megan had a spare key to. Home was where I kept my father's watch, Sarah's jewelry box, and the coin collection from my grandfather. If she had the nerve to mock me while I lay unconscious, what would stop her from pawning my memories while I healed? I asked Kayla to call a taxi for the next morning. She looked surprised, but she didn't argue. "Just take it slow," she said. That evening, I scrolled through old photos. Megan at 6, missing her front teeth and holding a birthday cake. Megan at 12, beaming in her soccer uniform. Megan at 22, walking down the aisle with Brandon, my proudest moment until I noticed the way he squeezed her arm too tightly. I had told myself he'd mellow out, that she'd soften him, that they'd grow into good people if I just kept helping. But the truth was clear now. I had mistaken dependency for love, excuses for loyalty. The next morning, the taxi dropped me at my curb. My house looked the same, but the air felt wrong, like someone else had been breathing it. Inside, I went straight to the kitchen. The coffee canister where I kept my emergency cash was nudged an inch to the left. My hand shook as I lifted the lid. Half the money was gone. Upstairs, my father's watch was missing from its box. In the study, my files had been rifled through. My pulse spiked, but it wasn't just fear anymore. It was fury, hot and steady, keeping me upright even while my heart still ached. I walked room to room cataloging the losses. The coin collection was gone. The fountain pen Sarah had given me on our 25th anniversary was gone. Small items easy to sell, but priceless to me. Megan had been here. She had taken what she wanted and left the rest, like a thief who didn't even bother to cover her tracks. I sank into my chair and laughed bitterly. All these years I believed I was saving her, protecting her, giving her a chance. But she had only been studying me, studying my house, my accounts, my habits, like an appraiser preparing for an estate sale. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at my desk, staring at the deed to my house. The papers were neatly stacked, the ink clear and final. My name was on every line. Not Megan's, not Brandon's, mine. And for the first time since Sarah's death, I realized that was power. They had counted on me dying quietly, leaving everything neatly tied with a bow for them to squander. But I wasn't dead. I was very much alive, and I had options. I pulled out my address book and ran my fingers over the pages until I found a name I hadn't spoken in years. Henry Dalton, an old friend turned real estate broker. He had hounded me for decades to sell the house, always saying, "Too much space for one man, Art. Too much upkeep." I had laughed him off, called the house my anchor. But maybe an anchor was just another word for chain. I picked up the phone, stared at it, and set it down again. Not tonight. Tonight, I just needed to sit with the truth. My daughter had betrayed me, and my silence had made it possible. In the dim light of the lamp, Sarah's portrait smiled down at me. I whispered to her the words I couldn't say to Megan. I see it now. I see them for who they are. My hand brushed the empty spot on the dresser where my father's watch had been, and I made myself a promise. Tomorrow, I would decide what kind of man I wanted to be. Would I stay the fool they thought I was, or would I finally take back the life I'd almost lost? The night gave me no answer, But my heart, fragile as it was, kept beating steady, as if daring me to choose. The morning sun spilled through my blinds and painted everything in pale gold, but the light only made the house look emptier. I brewed coffee out of habit, the kitchen smelling the way it always had, yet nothing felt familiar. Every corner whispered betrayal. I couldn't stop imagining Megan and Brandon walking through here while I lay unconscious in a hospital bed, her fingers pulling open drawers, his eyes calculating the resale value of my life. My pulse throbbed against the bandage on my arm, but it wasn't weakness. It was anger steady enough to keep me upright. I had always told myself anger was useless, a waste of energy. But maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe anger was fuel. I sat at the table, staring at the coffee canister with its lighter weight, and I thought about what Sarah would say if she were here. She had always been sharper than me. She would have caught Megan's lies early, maybe even stopped this rot before it grew. But I had wanted to be the generous father, the patient one, the man who believed in his daughter no matter what. And now belief had left me broke in spirit and robbed of my treasures. By mid-morning, I knew I couldn't stay still. I called Henry Dalton. His voice came through the line crisp and alive. "Art, been years. What's new?" I told him plainly. "I want to sell the house." A pause, then a low whistle. "You? After all these years swearing you'd die in that place?" "Plans change," I said. "How fast can you move?" His excitement spilled like a salesman smelling commission. "In this market? A week. Maybe less. Your neighborhood's booming. Developers will fight over it." I agreed to meet him that afternoon. My voice never shook, though my hands did after I hung up. Selling the house felt like cutting off an arm, but it also felt like choosing myself for once. If Megan wanted to inherit my life, she would inherit nothing. Before Henry arrived, I forced myself to check every room again. Each absence cut deeper than the last. The coin collection wasn't just coins. It was Saturdays with my grandfather teaching me patience, telling me the story behind each penny, each silver half-dollar. The watch wasn't just metal. It was my father's final gesture, a trust passed down. Even the fountain pen Sarah had given me carried her voice, her laugh, when I'd ruined my shirt with ink the first time I used it. Megan hadn't stolen objects. She had stolen pieces of me. And the realization hardened into resolve. If she could be practical about my death, I would be practical about her expectations. Henry showed up with his camera and clipboard, sharp suit despite the heat. He walked the house like a hawk, noting the hardwood, the original trim, the mature trees shading the backyard. "You've maintained this place beautifully," he said. "Families will line up." I watched him take photos, and something in me cracked. This was the home Sarah and I had built together. Every nail, every coat of paint, every dent in the wall was a memory. And yet letting it go felt right. Because memories, I realized, don't live in wood or glass. They live in me. Megan couldn't pawn those, not unless I let her. When Henry left, promising paperwork within the day, I sat in my chair until dusk. My phone buzzed twice. Brandon's number once, Megan's number once, but I didn't answer. Let them wonder. Let them stew. They thought I would always pick up, always forgive, always pay. Not anymore. I wasn't their safety net. I wasn't their drama king. I was the man who had nearly died and come back with clearer eyes. Later that night, I stepped outside, the air cooler than it had been in weeks. My neighbor Carol waved from her porch. "Heard you were in the hospital, Art. You okay?" I forced a smile. "Better now." She hesitated, then crossed the yard, lowering her voice. "Megan and Brandon were walking around yesterday, talking about your house, saying what they'd change when it was theirs. It didn't sit right with me." Her words punched harder than any monitor alarm. So it was true. They were already counting the walls, measuring the curtains, planning their lives around my death. I thanked her, kept my face calm, but inside something cold and sharp took hold. I went back inside and pulled out my ledger. For years I'd recorded every loan, every favor, every bailout, even if I never asked for repayment. $12,000 for their down payment, $1,500 for rent, $800 for groceries, $1,000 for car repairs. The numbers stretched down the page like a history of my foolishness. I stared at the total and whispered, "Never again." The pen felt heavy in my hand, but this time it didn't stain my shirt. This time it carved the truth into paper. The final debt was paid. Sleep came fitful and shallow. I dreamed again of Sarah, but this time she wasn't warning me. She was nodding, approving, as if she knew what I was about to do. I woke before dawn, the house silent except for the creak of old wood settling. Tomorrow Henry would return with contracts. Tomorrow the house would no longer be mine. I looked around at the walls, at the fading photographs, at the empty spots where treasures once sat, and I whispered to the quiet, "You thought you'd buried me, Megan, but you've only unearthed me." For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Not because the burden of the house was gone yet, but because the burden of pretending my daughter loved me was. I poured myself another coffee, watched the sun crawl higher, and waited for the day to start, ready to make a move that would change everything. Saturday dawned crisp and bright, the kind of morning that usually meant trimming hedges or fixing gutters. But instead I sat at a polished oak table in Henry Dalton's office signing away the house I had poured 30 years into. My signature looked steady on the page, but inside my chest a storm raged. With every stroke of the pen, I felt Sarah's voice whispering, "Let go. Arthur, let go." When the final page was notarized and Henry handed me a cashier's check for $430,000, my hands no longer trembled. For the first time in decades, I was free, not of a house, but of a trap built from obligation, guilt, and my daughter's greed. Henry clapped me on the back. "You'll sleep lighter now, Art. Houses are weight when they're not joy anymore." I nodded. He didn't know the half of it. That afternoon, I packed a single suitcase in a modest hotel room across town. The room smelled of detergent and air freshener, bland but clean, anonymous. I sat on the bed, staring at the check folded neatly in my wallet, and imagined Megan's face when she realized her inheritance had evaporated. She and Brandon had treated me like a man already gone, a corpse on borrowed time. But I wasn't gone, and I'd just buried their future under someone else's welcome mat. The thought gave me a dark satisfaction I hadn't felt in years. By Monday, Henry had found the perfect buyers, a young couple with a toddler who ran across the lawn like it was heaven's playground. They walked through the house with wide eyes, marveling at the hardwood Sarah had chosen, the backyard where Megan had once chased fireflies. I watched the little girl spin in the grass and felt something loosen inside me. This family would love the house the way it deserved to be loved. Memories would return to its walls, but they would be honest ones, not poisoned by entitlement. When the keys changed hands that Friday, the weight on my shoulders dissolved. I turned my back on the porch, and I swear I could feel Sarah smiling from somewhere beyond. Megan found out 2 days later. My phone rang while I drank coffee overlooking the river from my hotel window. Her voice, sharp and panicked, cut through the line. "Dad, what have you done? There are strangers in the yard, moving furniture inside. Tell me this is a mistake." I let a long silence hang before answering. "No mistake. I sold the house." Her gasp sounded like betrayal flipped on its head. "Without telling me? Without discussing it with family?" I almost laughed. "Family? The family that left me in a hospital bed while you toasted cocktails with your husband? That family." Her words grew shrill. "You can't just sell our house." I cut her off. "It was never your house, Megan. It was mine. And now it belongs to people who will cherish it. You planned my funeral too early." Then I ended the call. 20 minutes later, she stormed up to the house, shouting at the new owners on the lawn. I parked across the street, watching her wave her arms, her face red with rage. The couple looked confused, clutching their daughter as though Megan were a wild stranger. I stepped out and called her name. She spun toward me, her fury curdling into desperation. "Dad, tell them. Tell them you weren't competent, that this was all a mistake." The young father looked at me nervously. "Is there a problem, sir?" I shook my head. "No problem. Just my daughter forgetting that you don't inherit property until your parent is actually dead." Megan's mouth fell open. Her lips trembled, but I felt no pity. Not anymore. The new owners ushered their child inside, leaving Megan and me alone. She dropped the mask then, her voice low and venomous. "You've ruined us. Do you know the debts we're carrying? We were counting on." I raised my hand. "On my death." "Yes, I heard. The neighborhood talks. You and Brandon walking around, measuring square footage like vultures circling a carcass. You wanted my heart to fail so you could cash in. Well, congratulations, Megan. My heart's still beating, and you get nothing." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were dry tears, a performance I'd fallen for 100 times. "Not this time." She whispered, "I'm your daughter." I met her gaze, cold and final. "You cut yourself out the day you chose money over blood." I walked away while she stood stranded on a sidewalk that was no longer hers. For the first time, I felt no tug of guilt, no ache to comfort her. I climbed into my car and drove off without looking back, the image of her shrinking in the mirror until she disappeared entirely. 3 months later, I sat in a small apartment in Cincinnati, the Ohio River flowing past my window like a silver ribbon. The place was modest but mine, filled only with things I wanted, not things others expected me to keep. Peace had a sound, I discovered. It was the hush of water moving steadily, not the shrill ring of a phone demanding another bailout. On June 15th, Megan's birthday, I dialed her number out of ritual. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice stiff. "Hello, Dad." I wished her a simple happy birthday. Her reply was curt, defensive. "We're fine. No thanks to you." I smiled faintly. "I'm glad you're managing. Just one more thing. Try not to be so dramatic, sweetheart." Silence stretched, then the line went dead. I set the phone aside and sipped my coffee. Through the window, I saw a young family strolling the riverside path, their child running ahead with a kite that soared against the clear sky. Watching them, I realized that life wasn't ending after all. It was just beginning in a different shape. Megan's inheritance was gone, but what I gained was worth more than any check or deed. I had gained freedom, clarity, and the quiet dignity of a man who refused to be anyone's victim again. If you followed me this far, I want to thank you for listening to my story. If it moved you, please subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me what time it is where you are right now. I'll be reading, and I'd love to know.